one of my favorite philosophies in the context of any relationship, whether it be business, whether it be personal, whether it be a friendship, is the concept of interesting versus interested. You know, I had a really interesting situation happened to me a number of years ago. I had a photocopier rep come to see me, and the long story short is that this gentleman was brought out to sign up a deal that had already been done. I was working for a marketing branding company, and the gentleman that owned the company had spent about $30,000 having amazing artwork designed for his marketing collateral. And unfortunately, he was still printing all of his, or he was having his sales team still print all of the marketing collateral with a bubble jet printer. And so, as you can imagine, at the end of the day, all the sales reps printing these, ink saturated pages, waiting for them to dry, spread out on the floor, and I said to the gentleman, I said, look, we really must get a laser printer. We'll invest in it. We'll get one of the companies to come out and sell us a really nice machine that does everything. It scans, it copies, it faxes. We can email things. We can, have really good quality printing, because we've spent all this money on the design. Now we need the image to match that. And he agreed, and he gave me authority to sign off on a budget of about 30 grand on this, big copy machine. And I never forget, it was a 9 a.m. meeting, and this gentleman who was, probably a little closer to retirement, he had one of those tweed jackets on and some arm patches, the leather patches on the tweed jacket. And he waltzed into my office about 9 a.m. and I was having a bit of a meltdown in terms of staff sicknesses and things like that. We had a massive pitch to go and pitch a sponsorship deal to Nike that day, and I was trying to sort of organise and reschedule everybody as, Bob walked in the door. And what was really interesting was that he came in with a compendium, and he sat down, and I said, oh, Bob, I'm really sorry. We've had a bit of an epidemic here at the office today, and, I'd really like to get this all sorted. And unfortunately, I don't have the hour to put aside for the meeting right now. What I need to do is I just need to sign the paperwork. It's okay, though, because the boss has given me the authority to sign off on the agreement, and we should be able to do it in about 15 minutes, because I just need to know the difference between this model number and this model number, because I had one of these machines when I worked at another organisation. And he sat down at the table with his compendium, and he proceeded to open his display folder, and he says with one flip of the page, yes, our company was established in 1974, and he went into his pitch as though he hadn't even heard me speak. So out of respect to the gentleman, I sat there for a moment, and I listened to him, because, I was brought up to respect my elders, and this man was old enough almost to be my grandfather. And so I sort of let him talk for a little bit longer. And then when there was a lull in the conversation, I said, oh, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate you going through all of that. And as I said, I've had one of these machines before. I'm really familiar with how it works and what it does. And so really all I just want to do right now is actually get a clear idea about which machine out of these two that I've selected with the model number here, as I can't tell the difference between the specs, and we'll go ahead and sign the deal and you can deliver. And then he went into his compendium again and told me about how all the toners are environmentally friendly and completely recyclable. Basically, 45 minutes later, there was one frustrated Chandell who showed Bob the door and thanked him for the time. And then I called another copier company that was their direct competitor. So I think that one of the big failings that Bob made that day was that he was so focused on the idea of being interesting and having his company be interesting to me, that he neglected to get interested in what I actually needed, and it cost him a very important sale.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have stories that relate to that one about that salesperson there, and we all have our own beliefs about what we need to find out to make a buying decision, but it's not always the same as what our customers want to know. So, yeah, very important point.
Absolutely. And, I think that it's one of those things that people don't always recognize that they're actually doing, Nathaniel. And you see, I think there is a lot of people out there that don't necessarily have that internal confidence that they need to have in their ability to communicate their message, that they think that their prospects are only going to be interested if they're being very interesting, and that they talk about how long the company has been around and what kind of history that they have and all those sorts of things, which at the end of the day, the buyer is really just interested in knowing whether or not can this company, can this person solve the immediate problem that I have, and how can I then populate that investment that I'm making with them into a tangible result for myself.
Yeah. I see a lot of business owners and even speakers and authority figures selling, telling their story, talking about all their credibility and stuff, and quite often it comes across like they're overselling themselves. Like why would somebody do that? You seem like you're overcompensating for something, and it makes them seem actually less credible than what they would otherwise. And these days, a lot of information about your background and so on is available online through likes of LinkedIn or other mediums, and I think sometimes by giving away too much of the sales pitch up front without knowing what the buyer's need is, you come across as a little bit desperate or overcompensating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolutely right what you're saying, Nathaniel. In some cases, people think that they're building trust when in actual fact what they're doing is they're highlighting reasons why the person would question and potentially losing trust, because it's like, I remember my grandfather used to have this saying, methinks he protests too much, and so, if you're really working so hard to build the value of the organization in the person's eyes, it's not something that they need to come to that conclusion for themselves, which again is, feeding the right kind of salt. So ultimately, it has a lot to do with the way that we process information. So I'm just going to build a foundation for a moment, and I want to share with you just a quick snapshot of the NLP model of communication. Now, this is a complex process, and to be honest with you, I could probably spend an entire day educating you about this process, but I think that because we know we're in the business of working with people, regardless of what your product or service is, the person that's buying it from you is a person, and so therefore they will process information in the way that we process our communications. I think it's an important point just to make relevant for a couple of the points that we'll share after. So we have a whole bunch of events going on in our external world, and in his book, Flow, Milhai Csikszentmihalyi said that we get 11 million bits of information that come into our neurology in every single second, and that comes in through our 5 senses. So that's our visual pictures, auditory sounds, kinesthetic feelings, and how we process our emotions, the olfactory smells, and the gustatory tastes. And what happens is we choose 126 bits of information by deleting, distorting, and generalizing information that comes in. So out of those 11 million bits, we delete the stuff that we don't think is relevant to us, and we distort and generalize based on whatever memories and filters we already have in our unconscious system, in our brain. Now, it's not something that you do consciously. Some people say to me, if somebody's got a higher IQ, do they process more information? No, not really. Basically what it is, it's your deletion, distortion, and generalization of the information that's coming in. And we form a picture in our mind about what that situation means from second to second to second. And that influences the way that we feel, which is our state, and our body language or our physiology actually responds as a result of that picture that we create in our mind. And those things present and form the behavior that we respond with. So for example, if you're walking into a situation where in the past you've had a lack of sales success and you've had people give you objections that you haven't been able to handle or you didn't know how to answer them, then that can create a sense of anxiety or a sense of nervousness. The body actually responds, so you might get tense in your body language, or maybe your heart beats a bit faster with the anxiety or the nervousness, and that then translates into a behavior, which means that you may not say the right things at the right time with the client, or you may have that body language come across to the client, which then they could interpret as a lack of confidence that you have in your product or service. So these are the things that potentially go unnoticed in the concept of building rapport. Now, you probably heard that rapport in communication is made up of 3 things. We've got words, we've got physiology, and we've got tonality. Now, your physiology relates to facial expressions, breathing, things like, how you stand, your posture. Your tonality relates to, are you actually, excitable when you talk to people? Are you too excitable? Is the way that your tonality comes across as, apathetic, that you're not really interested in the client or you're not really interested in them? And then, of course, there's the words. Now, an astonishing 55% of rapport in communication is made up of physiology, as you can see there on the screen, and only 7% is attributed to words, and the other 38% is tonality. Now, you would have seen in the introduction that we actually had a fantastic case study that we did with a client where we actually went into their business, and there was a lot of appointments being made for business deals in a call center. And by just taking the strategy of the tonality of the person on the phone and changing that to match and mirror the way that the recipient was talking at the speed, pace and tonality, we were able to increase their closing ratio of phone to appointment from 15% to 85%. Now, it was an astonishing growth, and that happened in 3 weeks. So the simple process of changing the way that you use your voice to match the person on the other end of the phone can actually have an impact about whether or not you win the appointment or not. So when we talk rapport, we often talk about body language, we talk about, what you do with your gestures or your proximity to a person, but I want you to know that it's actually more than that. And these things are relevant for people who are actually converting to face-to-face appointments. So if you're in the room with your prospect, one of the quickest ways that you can actually change the outcome of your meeting is to be mindful about one of these things. Now, LMPs will tell you about your posture and being open, being versus closed. And in actual fact, I'm not talking about any of that today. I'm talking about the fact that people who are like each other generally like each other. And so when someone notices that there's a similarity between themselves and the person across from them, there's an automatic unconscious rapport that happens. And so we'll talk a little bit about this today, but mostly we unpack this quite significantly in the Confident Closing program that we run, where you can actually look at ways that you can interpret what's the way that the person across from you would like to have the information received, so that way then you can deliver your message in that way. But one of the things that I like about matching and mirroring is that you can do it with really, really, really small items, something as simple as blinking at a certain rate. Everybody blinks at a different rate, and if you actually match and mirror the rhythm and pace at which somebody will be blinking, you can actually create an unconscious rapport with them. So just a little FYI that maybe some of you don't know out there. So let's talk about having a system. Oh, sorry, Nathaniel, go.
I was just going to add there that I've attended the Confident Closing workshop myself, and I've had various team members over the years attend. And it's is it still one day, or is it more than that now?
We've got a 2-day workshop, Nathaniel. We have some great exercises that people do overnight, particularly with relation to the niching section and handling objections. So if you get the chance to come along, you can come along and attempt to stump me with your best objections. We have a fantastic section where we workshop everybody's objections and we come up with responses. And I haven't been stumped by a big enough objection yet. So that's my challenge to everybody on the call. If you make it along to Confident Closing, you've got to bring along your best objections.
Yeah, I think it's awesome to tie these sales techniques in with whether you call it NLP or just psychology is quite rare. Like I've done a lot of sales training over the years, and do a lot of Tony Robbins and that kind of stuff. And to have this this course, which is focused on sales but uses a lot of these psychological things, is really I found it really valuable, and yeah, highly recommend it.
Oh, thank you, Nathaniel. We're really glad that you enjoyed it. And I think that it's really important. One of the things that, as I mentioned to you, I was quite a successful salesperson in my own right. One of the things that I learned very early on, my mum, Teresa, who actually is a partner in the business as well, she had hairdressing and beauty salons. And so I grew up in an environment where I learned how to build rapport with people and build that interpersonal connection just by modeling my mum and how excellent she was at that. And, I think one of the things that people don't realize is that it's really about, it's not about mind tactics or trying to manipulate somebody or trying to get them to do something that they don't want to do. It's a simple factor of being able to look at, well, hey, everybody's a person. We all have emotions. We all have, troubles, but we also have wins, and we're all seeking an easier way to do this thing that we call life. And so if we can tap into finding out about that and then presenting our solution in a way that really connects with the client, then that's really important. And in the sales success that I had had, one of the things that I was always constantly interested in was further development and further learning. And like you said, Nathaniel, you do a lot of training. And what I was finding as a corporate salesperson was I would go off and do a training, and it would mostly be about scripts and dialogues or strategy. And people would say, okay, when client says X, then you say Y. And it's kind of like, well, what if client doesn't say X? What am I supposed to do then? And so this is really about being able to read your client and then deliver the response in the way that they are most comfortable to receive it, if that makes sense. So having a system to sell beyond your words, I think that a lot of small businesses out there don't necessarily know what their roadmap is for their clients. They know what they want to achieve out of their business. They might know what their sales targets are. They might know that they need to achieve a certain amount of closes or have a certain amount of appointments or get a certain amount of proposals out. But ultimately, they're not always looking at that from the point of view of the client. So what's your roadmap, and how can you make it easy for me to do business with you? And when I say me, I mean your prospects. So ultimately, I know a lot of salespeople or a lot of business owners that are selling their products and services that really have no idea about what they want to achieve in a meeting. They go for a coffee catch-up or they go for a meeting and they really have no objective. And I wanted to share a quick story about something that I did with a client really recently, actually, who he was selling a trade service, and when he walked into his appointment, I actually asked him during one of our coaching sessions, and I said, when you walk into your client appointment, what is it that you're thinking as you walk through the door? Like, what is your outcome? What is it that you want to achieve? And he says, look, I really don't have a clue. I'm just going in there hoping that, the person's nice and that they actually listen to what I have to say and that they don't get bored and that I don't forget what I want to say and all of that. Now, aside from the fact that that's all focused on what he didn't want, one of the things that I shared with him was a strategy that I used to use when I was in sales myself. And basically, when I turned up to an appointment and I actually parked my car in the driveway, I already had clear in my mind what I was wanting to walk out with. So not only did I create an internal image of me walking out of the business with a deal signed in hand, I also had already predicted in my mind's eye, or imagined, if you like, the chain of events of going well, of me being able to establish what the need was for the client, to easily be able to see how I could link that need to what it was that I had to offer them, and how they would just really get it and just really be excited to work with me. Now, that's not positive thinking. It's just about focus. So what is your intention, and how do you want me to do business with you? Do you even have a process? For example, you might have a meeting and then deliver a proposal and then engage. But what are the steps involved in that, or the micro steps? Do you actually have a system, and is it consistent? Do you have a certain amount of follow-up processes that you do? Do you send an email to thank the person for the meeting to keep yourself front of mind? Do you actually deliver a proposal, or is it simply a process of filling out some paperwork? Is there something that you do consistently that enables you to know, okay, I'm at this stage of the cycle, and I know that I need to do this next. So ultimately, it's about the process. There's been a lot of studies to show the psychology of people actually doing business and signing up for offers, particularly in the online space, where the more simple you can make it and the more instruction you can give the client will actually help you to convert more significantly and increase your closing ratios. And I think it's mainly because what we're having is used to be that we were bombarded with lots and lots of advertising messages, but now we've got so many different mediums, and Nathaniel, you've probably got even better stats on this than I do in terms of the amount of noise and traffic that people are dealing with, that now people are getting so many things done for them that they just want it to be easy, as simple as 1, 2, 3.